Are you ready to rock and roll? You guys are probably wondering, like, why is he wearing headphones? I've been wondering this whole time. Well, it's because I'm playing Fallout 4 while I'm coding and teaching you. I'm just kidding. I just listening to the microphone, making sure the audio quality is perfect and making sure I don't do lots of pops and tops. And you're like, make the popping stop. So, okay, so what we did last time was we got our Reflux in place with a simple GET request. Let's go ahead and have a little more fun and make this a list that we can actually post things to. So posting it to the server. So let's go to our list here. And we've done this before, but we'll do the code again. We did this in an earlier app for adding like an input box and things like that. But it won't take long, and practice makes perfect. So let's go ahead and do this now. So in our render function here, we've got, it's going to show a list of things here. So let's think about what we want. We want to have an input box and a button. So that's all. And we just got to create the, the state management for it. It's not too difficult. So let's go ahead and do that now. Let's make a div and an ending div. And we'll make the input box on the top and show the list on the bottom, which is fine. So let's say input. Let's make this go higher here. Okay, so let's do input, and placeholder is going to be add item, okay? And value is going to be equal to this dot state dot value. This is what we always do with input fields, very typical. I mean, you don't have to call value, but that's what we're calling it. Meaning this you have to call value, this you can call whatever you want. Okay, so there's the value. That looks good to me. And okay, and then on change, which is a reserved keyword for an input box. Okay, we're going to say this dot on input change. Okay, we don't want to call our other on change function because we're already using that for something else. Okay, so I'm going to end this, I believe. I think that's all we need to do here. And it's a little bit long, so let's just do this and this and this. Okay, that looks good to me. So there's our input box. Next to the input box, we want to have a button, right? So let's do that here. Let's make a nice space. Button on click equals this dot on click, which we have not created yet. By the way, this is stuff we've already done. On click is just the event that we're going to trigger when the button is clicked. And the button's going to say add item and button. Okay. So all we've done is right here is we've added an input box and we've added a button. And I haven't created the on click function. So let's go ahead and do that now right here on click function, E for event. That will be coming from the input box itself. This is pure React code here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to say if this dot state dot new text. Oh, and I haven't set that yet here. We need to do that as well too. We need to set our, in fact, I think I messed this up. Well, value works. I like new text better. It's the new text that's coming from the value. Sorry to be confusing. New text here in the value and new text over here. This is the new text that's coming. It's more explicit. I think it feels right. So on click, that looks good. Let's go ahead and if you don't know what I'm doing here, I'm just making sure that it's not null. So like if the user pressed the add button, I don't want to post something to the server that has no data in it. So all we're doing here is saying, hey, if this dot state dot new text, meaning if it is empty, this will equate to false and it will not be called. So what do you think we should do when the button is clicked? So someone's added an ingredient and they've clicked the button. Who should we talk to next? If you said we need to trigger an action so the store can trigger an action, then you would be correct. So we're going to say actions dot, not get ingredients, post ingredient, right? Post ingredient. And what are we going to post? This dot state dot new text, right? So the text from the box, we're going to post it. And of course, it's going to call this, and we can pass in whatever parameters we want, so long as we handle them, which we are right here. And that item that we passed, that ingredient, is going to come right here. And we need to finish this up in a minute, but we'll do this first here. So actions post ingredient whenever that button is clicked. Okay, that looks great. Oh, and we should probably clear the box, right? So we'll say this dot set state, and we can just say new text. Let's make it empty again. So we'll clear the box. No matter what, even if there's no text in there, we'll just clear it anyway. So looks good to me. Clearing the box. Okay, posting that there. Awesome. So we type in, it posts it there. Anything else we need to do here? I think probably in get initial state, we need to have another field here. New text. Okay. Looks good to me. We just need to implement one more thing. On input change. There it is. So on input change, and that's going to take a function with an E for the event. There we go. So every time the user types, we need to update that text field. Obviously, that makes sense. So this dot set state, and this is we're gonna change the new text. New text. Okay, and that's going to be e.target.value. Okay, so that's, and you've seen that before too, that's coming straight from the input box. So basically every time you type a keystroke, it updates the text field so we can visually see the change, and it saves the data here whenever we're ready to submit it. Cool, and so we know that if it's valid or if there's information in that text field, okay, that we can post that ingredient. So I think this is done. So let's go to our ingredient store and look at our post here. So we're going to post an ingredient, but how do we do that? Okay, we haven't talked about how we can post something. So we need to go ahead and implement a post request in our HTTP service. Okay, and of course fetch has provisions for that. So let's do that now. So this is the get request, and we're going to do a post request. It's going to be a similar format where it takes in the URL, but this time it's going to take in the ingredient. Okay, and let's think about this for a second. We know that React actually requires that we have ingredient, or excuse me, that we have lists that have unique keys on it. And so far we have just have a title, a text field. So this is interesting. So what are we going to do here? We've got this ingredient, but it's not unique, doesn't have a key. I think we need to go a step back into our ingredient store and figure out what our data is going to look like that we're actually going to post to the server before we finish implementing that over in the HTTP service. So I'm going to delete these comments that we put in here. And let's go ahead and just figure out what our data is going to look like. It's just going to have a key and a text. So let's create a new object here. So var ingredient, okay, and it's going to equal, so there's the text field, right, the text key, and that's text coming from right here, and then we need a unique ID, right? So we can do anything here. You can do a bajillion different ways to come up with unique IDs, but for now let's just do something based on time. I'm going to do date now divided by 1000. We're just going to kind of get some milliseconds here, and then we'll just add the text to the end of it just to give it a unique ID. So this is what our ID is going to look like. Remember how on our server I created those unique IDs? Well, now what we want to do is generate those unique IDs right here before we send it up. It could also happen on the server, but I think this is where I personally want to handle it just for right now. Okay, so that's what our data is going to look like. So I know it's an object now. So going back to HTTP service, I have a better idea of what we're going to be posting. So let's go ahead and manage that now. So post, well, we're going to do the same thing, return fetch. So we're going to make a fetch request, but it doesn't know what type it is. So first off, we'll do the same thing here, base URL plus URL. But the second parameter is options, okay, the options for the request, okay, and that's an object. So headers, we need to set some headers here in order for this to work. We're going to say accept. And by the way, if you don't understand this completely, this is you'll get used to this as you start doing more and more web development. These are just some headers that we're passing in with our request, so our server knows how to handle it. So it's going to be just plain text in our case here, and content dash capital type there. Okay, content type is going to be application slash JSON. Okay, that's our headers, and the method, okay, is going to be post. So this is a post request. And then what else do we need? The body, the actual data that we're going to send up to the server. And so we're going to use something called JSON.stringify. It's going to take actual JavaScript objects and JavaScript anything and turn it into JSON. So it can go across the wire via HTTP protocol and go to our server, and we're going to stringify our ingredient that we passed in. So that's what our post request looks like. This has nothing to do with Flux or Reflux. This is pure HTTP request, a post request. And then we're going to do then, and it's going to give us back a response. But in this case, we don't need anything from the server. Okay, we don't need any of the data, but I'm just going to return the response for sake of completion here. And this response, if there will be a body, our server, it sends back, successfully made a post, but we're just tidying some things up here. This looks good to me. So we're posting to the server. Here's our headers. We take the ingredient, we post it up, and that looks good to me. So going back now to the ingredient store, let's finish up our post ingredient function. So first things first, okay, let's think about how we want to handle this. So when a user submits a new ingredient, do we want that ingredient to have to go to the server and then come back before it updates? No, we want the UI to update instantly. That's good. That's good design. However, it's also good design to make sure you have the latest and greatest data. So what we're going to do is we're going to add, when the user presses that add button, we're going to immediately add it to the local this.ingredients. And then we're going to make the post request. And after the post request succeeds, we're going to re-download the data from the server just to make sure we have the latest data, because servers could add IDs, they could add different things to it, timestamps. It's important to always have refresh data, but we don't want to interrupt the user experience. So what I'm going to do here is first some error checking. We're going to say if there's no ingredients, okay, so meaning this is the first time an ingredient is being put in our list here, okay, we're going to say this.ingredients equals an empty array. So this is just a safety check here. If there was no ingredients created on our object yet, okay, let's say that this right here had not happened yet and someone tried to post something real fast, this is going to prevent a crash, well, not a crash, an error from happening. So that's just some simple cleanup there. And then we create the ingredient here. And so this is what we're going to do. We're going to first push it up locally, right? So this.ingredients.push, we're going to push it up locally first. Ingredient, that looks correct. Okay, so that's what's happening here. It's locally on our system here. And then we can say this.fire update. Okay, because we just added it. In fact, let's see if this is all up and running before we actually talk to the server here. Okay, let's make sure we're good to go. So let's go to terminal, go over here. Okay, it looks like the changes are okay. So if I go over here and refresh, it's doing the get request. Let's make sure this is working. So eggs, milk, bacon, frog legs. We're going to need some oil for those frog legs, especially if they're going to be deep fried. And let's click add item. So, okay, obviously our box here is working too. Now here's the moment of truth though, is if our oil is going to stay if I refresh the page, because I didn't post it to the server. But remember how I said I wanted to make it look like it's instantly adding, so we added it locally. So if I refresh the page, that oil should be gone, which it is because it wasn't persisted on the server. So everything's good to go so far. We know it's working, and we've triggered the update here, which is why it appeared. Let's see what happens if I didn't do that. Let's take off fire update. Okay, refresh the page, and let's put oil in here again. Okay, add item. Nothing happened. Okay. Nothing happened because we didn't fire the update, and therefore, over here in list, this onChange function was never called. So now you absolutely know for certain Reflux is working and it's talking to each other. So that's awesome. So this .fire update is now back in place. Last thing to do is get this working on the server, or meaning we're going to post it to the server. So http://post, okay, /ingredients, okay, and we're going to pass in the ingredient. Okay, remember all we're doing is, passing it in here, and the first one's the URL, that's all. And then that looks good, so let's go ahead and do the dot then. Okay, function, response. We're not going to do anything with this response, okay, but I'm just putting it there for completion's sake, and so we can have the callback here. Of course, we need a bind as usual. Okay, what do you think we need to do now? So we've just posted the object. Remember how I said that we want to get the latest and greatest data? Well, now here's the beauty of Reflux or the Flux architecture. I can just say this.get ingredients. Okay. So what's really interesting is if we didn't have Flux in place and I posted, my list would never have a way of knowing to get new data. Like, I mean, I could do all the code in here, but that'd be ridiculous. It would never know to go refresh the data because a new object was posted. we can now do that with Flux just by saying, hey, when the post comes back from the server and we've successfully posted it, let's go ahead and just download the ingredients again. And the user, it's not even going to be visible to the user because there's no refreshing of the DOM or anything like that. It's going to look flawless, right? And so it's all in place now. Let's make sure there's no errors in our compiler, and there's not. So if I refresh this page, and now I type in, what do we want to put in here? Something exciting. Ooh, how about deep fried pickles? Okay, we're going to the carnival, baby. So let's add the item. Okay, it is there. And you didn't even see it, but it posted the object, the response came back, and then we re-downloaded the list, and it didn't even appear anything crazy to the user, which is pretty awesome, I think. And if I refresh the page, it's still there. To take this even further as to why it's important, to refresh data from a server as much and often as you can. If I go to my server code, let's go find that here. Where is it? Let's just, hey, look, and it even printed out what was posted. Very nice. So let's open up our code here. I can't find it, and I don't want to open a bajillion desktops. Okay, there it is. So let's say I post an object, okay? And what I want to show you is just, again, the reason why it's important to refresh your data as much as you can, because events can be triggered on the back end that affect your data. So let's say we post a new object here, and it goes into this array. Let's say for some reason that I wanted to, anytime we post a new object, I want to do something with frog legs. This is a stupid example, but it just shows you how it's gonna affect your data. So we just push the ingredient here. That's great, but what if this time, right here in your post, we take the fourth object, 1, 2, 3, 4, so the third object in the array. So we say ingredients 3, okay, third object in the array, dot text, and we're just we'll change frog legs, okay? We're gonna say eagle's eggs. Why not? So what I'm showing you here is that data can change in the server, and it's important to have it. So what should happen when I rerun the server is when I first load this page, it'll say frog legs. But when I make my first post, frog legs should instantly change to eagle's eggs, okay, because the data is coming back from the server. That also tells us that our server is successfully loading up data as we should. Okay, and so let's run the server here. Okay, so I'm going to refresh the page. As you can see, frog legs, and let's go ahead and post something, let's just say energy drink. So when I press add item, frog legs should disappear. Energy drink should be added to the list as well. And it should say equals eggs, I would think. And there it is. Okay, so anyway, point being is the server changed the data, and so it's important to have the latest and greatest data, which is why, again, we do that from our code there. I'm going to revert this here. It's a silly example, of course. Okay, so there you have it. We get to this ingredient. So pretty cool, right? We've actually got data on our server. It's living and breathing. Really cool stuff. What do you think? Reflux is not too bad. And we're going to use this again. So mastered it. Make sure you get this down before you move on, because when you start building applications, you're definitely going to want to implement this architecture. That's it. Mark Price at devslopes.com. There's some acid reflux for you. Not acid reflux, Reflux.js with React. See you later. And remember, to get your free live help, go to devslopes.com and click on chat room. I'm there all the time, as well as a huge community of other students.